expectations.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. It is Friday, November 21st. Happy Friday.
Sounds pretty much very primitive, loose, sometimes disjointed, but very colorful.
Latest job numbers beat expectations. Another top story today, the establishment mourns Dick Cheney. Donald Trump, JD Vance are absent from that funeral service. All right, the U.S. is on the cusp of an economic revival. Will the Federal Reserve do the right thing and lower interest rates? Doubtful. I think that's going to be very doubtful. And as I mentioned, JD Vance, Donald Trump were conspicuously absent from the funeral service for global villain Dick Cheney, former vice president under George W. Bush. Let's see here. Little technical problem already. How is that happening? All right, well, let's just get into the news, shall we, for today, February 21st, 2025, on this Friday. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. All right, so first up, we're going to get into this story here from CBS News. Employers added 119,000 jobs in September, blowing past expectations. This was a delayed release because the government was shut down, and so they weren't releasing numbers. We still haven't got the inflation numbers, but unemployment ticked up, which means it's very likely that the inflation numbers will be going down, and at least that's an indication. Other big news from Just the News. Trump's Russia-Ukraine peace plan calls for the end of NATO expansion. Now, it wasn't overtly laid out. A news report published, there was mention of it in the AP, but also in the Financial Times. On Thursday, states President Donald Trump's 28-point peace plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war includes an agreement to stop the expansion of NATO and would use $100 billion in frozen Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine. All those are good things as far as I'm concerned. If NATO wasn't so zealous in wanting to expand into Ukraine, we probably wouldn't have this war. One America News, Trump and Vance not invited to former Vice President Dick Cheney's funeral. Here's the picture. You could see all the establishment folks. Al Gore, George W. Bush, who looks completely out of it, as does Joe Biden, Jill Biden, and then there's Kamala Harris sitting next to Mike Pence, another establishment figure. Trump's absence is notable as it is customary for the sitting presidents to attend the funerals of former presidents and vice presidents, highlighted President Trump's poor relationship with the Cheney family. It has nothing to do with that. It's the establishment, which Dick Cheney was a part of the GOP establishment, and the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment formed the uniparty, which everybody else is fighting against, everybody in the electorate. And a lot of new politicians on the left and on the right. GOP Senator Mitch McConnell, establishment figure, was also there, as was Nancy Pelosi. also establishment. Speaking of the establishment and anti-establishment, see if we can't get this feed going. Lost my. Fox News has the headline, Trump labels 6 Democrats who told troops to refuse unlawful orders as traitors who should be arrested. President Donald Trump said the video constituted seditious behavior. You've all probably seen it by now. It was Jason Crow and a bunch of other knuckleheads, Elisa Slotnick, all very nefarious intelligence people. It amounts basically to the 50 intelligence heads that signed the this and that and the other thing. It's the same thing. They're angling it a way to discredit Trump, trying to allude to the fact that somehow what he's doing is illegal or he's not a legitimate president. It is traitorous to do something so harmful and open. They're going against it's a fine line there, because they said, if you encounter unlawful orders, remember that you're serving it has nothing to do with it. The president is the executive. He is the commander in chief. Orders flow down from him. If you were asked to shoot civilians or something, yeah, sure. You're going to neglect that order. But that's what they're setting up. They're setting up the false flag. So there's going to be a time where they're going to make it seem like the National Guard or ICE or some sort of federal agency or somebody connected to Trump orders are going to do something to people. It's going to be a setup, a false flag, probably full of actors, because they're not really winning in their effort to take down Trump, who they consider a fascist, authoritarian, and all these other things, which he's not. He's constrained, obviously, by the Supreme Court, and he's constrained by Congress, particularly with spending and what he can do in terms of monies. Like, if he unilaterally wants to keep funding from New York City, that's going to be hard for him to do. However, as long as he controls Congress, which he will for another year or so, the Republicans do, they can withhold funding from New York City. Well, when we talk about fascism, there's a good article here in PJ Media. What we talk about when we talk about fascism, how a political word became a moral bludgeon. This is absolutely true. And what we're going to talk about here is, first of all, what fascism means and what they want it to mean. And I think Jamie Wilson outlined this article very well. First, he quotes Jonah Goldberg's iconic book, Liberal Fascism, attempted to bring clarity to the word fascist, defining it as a form of authoritarian statism. Real fascism meant a single party, a strongman leader, suppression of dissent, elimination of political pluralism, state-directed economics, and militarized culture that glorified struggle and obedience. Not really. What fascism, that's Mussolini's fascism, maybe. Fascism means, and we're going to get to that, is you have to look at the symbology of the fasces. It's a bundle of rods, birch rods used for capital punishment. So it represents authority. And in the middle, usually there's an axe that represents the state that has the right to met out capital punishment. What it means is pillars of power. Each rod represents a pillar of power within a society. And they all work together towards one goal. The goal in that United States was supposed to be freedom and liberty, and that's why even in the halls of Congress, the fasces is there to represent that. But they have kept an ugly carapace of poisonous word, but hollowed out its political content and packed it with a new moral meaning, one that serves the purposes better than the historical one in their usage. Fascist no longer, and they're talking about leftists here, no longer describes a regime or ideology. Rather, it marks someone as an outsider to their worldview, as someone dangerous, illegitimate, emotionally threatening, or unwilling to affirm assumptions of their moral tribe. Indeed, that is true. Classical meaning of fascism, I just explained basically what it meant. Single ruling party is strong. This is Mussolini's fascism. Strongman leader who defined the state's oppression of dissent and opposition. This is just authoritarianism. It's not really fascism. Control of coordination of industry through the state, hierarchy that demanded obedience. The point here is that that's not really fascism. Fascism is pillars of authority within the state working together. Yes, sometimes in Mussolini's fascism to oppress the people, but not always, not in the American sense. So you have to keep that in mind. The real fascism Mussolini was, in particular, the Catholic Church siding with authoritarian government, as did businesses. So there were three really pillars of power that were working together in that form of fascism. But you can include cultural power as well in that. But what we suffer under today is corporate fascism, which just means there are two pillars of power. There's a federal government and there's corporate power, and they work together in concert to oppress the rights of people in a lot of instances. Story goes on, however, to say openly hostile to individual rights, supposedly fascism is, not in the American sense. The citizen existed to serve the state, not the other way around. The word fascism comes from the Latin fasces, a bundle of rods lashed around with a leather thong around an axe carried by Roman lictors to symbolize authority and unity. Unity most particularly in the American sense. Fasces appears in the House of Representatives on the old Mercury dime and in other official iconography, because that's the way supposedly a republic ruled, was everybody, all the pillars of society working together as a republic. Presumably, as a true republic, allowing the people to decide on the rules. However, in the 30s already, the 20s and 30s, the Soviet Union discovered that fascist was too useful a weapon to leave tied to its original meaning. So they broadened it in Soviet propaganda. Fascist no longer referred to only Mussolini and Hitler. It now meant, this is the most important part, anti-communist, pro-capitalist, pro-Western. And then they say here, supportive of democratic institutions. Doesn't matter. What fascist meant from the 30s on was anti-communist, because it was really in the 30s that the fascists, Mussolini's fascists in Italy and in Germany, were anti-communist. Still socialist, but anti-communist. And that's when fascist got its more current meaning. Punk culture especially adopted it, and even mainstream conversation began to use it as shorthand for anything restrictive or controlling behavior, authoritarianism. A strict teacher was a fascist. A demanding boss was a fascist. I never used that term, but a bureaucrat enforcing rules was a fascist. Even a fussy hall monitor could be called a fascist. This is where progressives went with it. The identity politics shift. A fascist is someone whose disagreement is well, this is their perverse syllogism, runs like this: disagreement is harm, harm is violence, violence is oppression, oppression is fascism. So that's where they took the word and turned it into something that someone who hurts your feelings is a fascist, or someone who doesn't agree with you is a fascist. Emotional danger, ideological dissent, and that's where you get the communists calling everybody fascist, because if you dissent ideologically from socialism, you're a fascist. Anything pro-capitalist, fascist. Anything pro-Western, fascist. Anti-communist, fascist. Refusal to affirm identity-based norms, fascist. Resistance to moral worldview, fascist. Fascist marks someone as harmful. Nazi marks someone as morally illegitimate. And Hitler means you're the devil. So that was a good roundup by the PJ Media about how this word fascism came to being. Let's see if I can't get this feed going again here. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, I made the mistake of trying to run another program in the background, and it just... Moving on with the headlines, though, have over 26 more to get through. So, Post Millennial is reporting that Texas busts 31 illegal immigrant truckers in one-day operation. Most held California CDLs, commercial driver's licenses. When illegal immigrants break the law and illegally drive on our roads, they endanger the lives of our countless Texans and Americans, as we've seen in those major accidents with semi-drivers, both Sikh illegal immigrants that resulted in 8 or 10 deaths. Sticking in Texas, just the news, Texas Governor Greg Abbott directs state police to launch criminal investigations into Muslim Brotherhood, and CARE. They made their goals clear, according to Abbott, to forcibly impose Sharia law and establish Islam's mastership of the world. Is this true? Is it not true? We know that CARE is a community organization that aids Muslims and is said to have terrorist ties. I don't know about that, but even Muslims have warned us. Muslims in other countries like Jordan have warned us about the Muslim Brotherhood because they're about jihad. They're forcibly and concerned with, first of all, flooding the zone, then, of course, taking over politically, and if that doesn't work, using force to enforce their worldview, Sharia law, etc. Is there really a risk of Sharia law in the United States? But in predominantly Muslim areas, they already are starting to enforce moral code, and we've seen that in places like Minnesota. Post-millennial, Andy No reports first Antifa terrorism convictions in the United States. Five far left extremists in Texas have admitted in federal court to being Antifa members, and a North Texas Antifa cell that carried out an ambush terror attack on an ICE facility. Yes, there are card-carrying members of Antifa. A lot of the anarcho-communists don't card carry Antifa, but they do let's see here. They do support the same ideology, which is the problem. It's not even so much the title or being a card-carrying Antifa member, but this is an important step in designating people that they're obviously involved in terrorism, shooting people for their political beliefs, that's terrorism, and defacing public property, damaging public property, laying siege to federal buildings. It's all terrorism. The Federalist Duffy threatens to pull $75 million in road funds after Pennsylvania gave an alleged terrorist this commercial driver's license. This pairs up with that other article from Just the News with the Texas enforcement. We need to crack down, obviously, on this. And there was another bust just recently in New York where Canadian drivers coming over the border were busted, and they too were that had United States commercial driver's license were illegal aliens. And Sean Duffy, who is the Secretary of Transportation, threatens to pull $75 million in funding from Pennsylvania if they don't crack down on these illegal immigrants. New York Post, violent firebug who set women ablaze on Chicago train as a long rap sheet, had no business being on the streets. Again, this is an issue in blue states and blue cities where they're soft on crime. So just because someone is mentally ill doesn't mean they have an excuse to commit crime and be on the street. We saw this in Charlotte. We saw this in Chicago. We see it in New York. An insane illegal immigrant in New York City did the same thing, lit somebody on fire, and that woman died in that attack. Like I said, I believe prisons should have mental facilities in there for mentally ill criminals, because you can't really put the mentally ill in the general population. It's not fair to the prisoners who are there to have to deal with people who are mentally ill. They need different care. So this guy, Lawrence Reed, age of 50, was hit with federal terrorism charge after he was caught on camera dousing a 26-year-old woman in gasoline, chasing her through the train car, and then setting her alight on Monday night. And then he yelled at her, "Burn alive, bitch." I don't know what's going on with people. There's a moral decay. And these people are insane, obviously, but they're less insane people, whether they're sane or not, or another thing, that cheer on this kind of violent behavior. It's so fucked up. Post-millennial, again, candidate running to represent Nashville in Congress, says she hates Nashville. "I hate the city. I hate the bachelorettes. I hate pedal taverns. I hate country music. I hate all the things that make Nashville an it city to the rest of the country." Why should you be elected? I think we need to revise who's able to represent where and when. You could literally move to a city, a district, or a state, be there for a day, as long as you have legal residency, you can demonstrate legal residency, and then you could run for office there. Interloper. Democrat candidate Afton Bain is under fire after recordings surfaced of her expressing hostility towards Nashville, the city she currently represents in the state legislature and would represent as part of the district if elected to Congress. The December 2nd election was triggered by the July resignation of a Republican Representative Mark Green, who left Congress for the private sector position. Voters will choose between Matt Van Epps, the GOP nominee, who will likely get elected, and a Tennessee National Guard veteran. Oh, he is a Tennessee National Guard veteran who previously served as commissioner of the Department of General Services, and Bain, a Democratic state representative, a former community organizer. Yuck. Moving on, the Federalist exclusive, GOP leaders grill Judge Boasberg for allowing Jack Smith to spy on the Senate. Boasberg approved a scheme under the Department of Justice's Arctic Frost weaponization against Republicans, in which Smith could subpoena the phone records of House and Senate Republicans and attach a non-disclosure NDO so that the congressional bodies could not find out about it from the telecommunications providers being subpoenaed. Non-disclosure agreement. Republican lawmakers note that the 43 subpoenas issued to Verizon and 2 issued to AT&T all had non-disclosures, and 19 were approved by Boasberg. We've heard about this guy before. He's an activist judge. He should be. And people are trying to have him impeached, and he should be. That's not the way to act. That's not fair. Justice is balanced. So how is that fair where people haven't been, there has been shown no evidence of them committing a crime, why should they be allowed to be spied on? And they're with the opposition party, which adds another layer of corruption. Just the new security footage reveals suspected Jan 6 pipe bomber visited a third building before the Capitol riot. Video footage located by congressional investigators. Oh, they didn't burn anything, I guess. The committee, the January 6th committee, destroyed evidence. They didn't destroy this. Shows the still unidentified January 6th pipe bomber. Their first stop was to a congressional Black Caucus building, but no explosive device was discovered there, raising new questions about the suspect's goals and motivations ahead of the Capitol riot. Well, we know basically that this was a setup. The reasoning being that there was a change at the last second to decide what the targets were and why it was the GOP headquarters and the Democrat headquarters. Obviously, somebody made that decision instead of making it the DNC headquarters and the Black Caucus headquarters. That would have given it more of an air of white supremacy, right? Is that's what they were trying to build off. But probably at last minute, they decided not to do that for some unexplained reason. Maybe it would be too apparent. The thing is, when intelligence operations go down, the main thing connecting them all is ambiguity. When there are clues left, it's always so ambiguous that you don't know what the fuck. And that's the way they want you to be. They want you to, you don't know what the motive, there should be ambiguity about motive. And they do this all the time. There's always no motive, or the motive is misunderstood, or they're competing motives. So the reason is so they don't figure it out. Because if it was just put on the Republicans of white supremacy and then it started to unravel, that maybe people could think that they're trying to frame up the Republicans, which they were. I originally said that it was either a young person, a kid, an Asian, or a woman because of the slight build of the bomber. Also, why did they wear a gray hoodie instead of a black hoodie? Right? If you're sneaking around at night with a face mask, wouldn't you want to be wearing all black? So there's reasoning behind that also. PJ Media, DOJ arrests U.S. citizens and Chinese nationals for exporting AI tech to China. 2 U.S. citizens, 2 Chinese nationals. They were trying to export to China advanced NVIDIA microchips. Those are the AI chips. Graphics processing units, GPUs, are used in a wide range of critical artificial intelligence applications. The 2 Americans arrested were Han Ning Ho, also known as Matthew Ho, a Tampa resident who was born in Hong Kong, Chinese, and Brian Curtis Raymond of Huntsville, Alabama. The 2 Chinese nationals arrested by the DOJ were Cham Lee, also known as Tony Lee, and residents in Leandro, California, Jing Chen, also known as Harry Chen. Good. Arrest. Yeah, there's something, I'm getting something fucked up here. One of my viewers here is saying, no, I can't access the show. They tried twice already. I'm going to try to restart.